3, 2, 1. Let's go! I am the host of the PBE podcast, sitting down with Bob Ellsworth. Sir, I'll have you introduce yourself in a minute. I wanted to just point out where we are, right? We're sitting here in Wichita Falls, 2023 at the Southwest Section AAPG. For you, it's another convention, right? It's another set of people. It's another whole, all new crowd, all new contacts. But for us, it's, we don't get to do this very often. We're not here all the time.
Yeah.
This is a special place, man. Wichita Falls.
That's
We're
right.
meeting all the young geos that are growing up and becoming the juggernauts of the next generation, the decision makers, man, the ones that are going to really ride this thing out. Whatever happens with prices, we have to get energy out of the ground. We have to be efficient about it. We have to figure out what's really going on. How can we become better, right? More reliable. That's what everybody wants. Everybody's chasing the idea that, well, we're going to go through this energy transition because we need reliable, cheap energy that's safe and it's good for the environment, right? You have all these like outside influences on the energy sector and the oil and gas industry, right? Kind of the grandfather of it all is sitting back like, hey, we're here. We're here and we're here for a long time.
That's right.
Some people get stuck in that rut and they don't really innovate, right? Some companies and some professionals are like, we don't need it. We don't need to invest in changing the narrative. We know the reality of how reliable and cheap this energy is. It's not going anywhere. Renewables and alternatives might have a bigger challenge to really make an impact and become part of the true energy industry. And it's all on the backs of a lot of different ideas, but one of which is reliability, right? Efficiency, right? What are you really doing to make money here and make energy? RevoChem is doing their part. We'll get into that. Please give me a little elevator pitch of who you are.
Yeah. So thanks for the introduction. My name is Bob Ellsworth. I'm the business development manager at RevoChem.
Nice.
So I'm a geologist. I've been a geologist for about 14 years.
All right.
So I've worked. Most of my career has been spent at startups.
Okay.
So I was a little core analysis startup doing digital rock physics, digital core analysis for the first part of my career. And then I joined an operator.
Okay.
So I was
Which one?
Apache.
Oh, nice.
So I
That's
worked
not a
there.
startup.
That was not a startup. No. So I was on the unconventional exploration team there for a
Cool.
few years. And then I think it was about 3 or 4 years I was there. And then I joined RevoChem.
Wow.
Doing business development.
Wow. So you had 3 jobs coming out of college?
Yep.
It's your third one.
It's my third one.
I was just talking to somebody, the president of Recon, the wireline company on the other side of the wall from you.
Yeah.
And the president was saying that, when you're young, you can make some good lateral movements, in your career. And that's kind of what you're doing, right? You're swapping, kind of moving laterally, not really going vertical, but now you're planted at RevoChem. You got a technical degree, and you're doing business development
Yeah.
for a company that's supplying very technical data to the industry.
Yeah.
And now you're ready to climb vertical.
That's the plan.
Right
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, I mean, when I started off from at a geologist level, helping develop the technology, commercialize it. I moved into more of an advisory role there,
Okay.
and then moved over to an operator. Kind of learned that side of the industry. Going from service company to operators, definitely a different viewpoint, and did that for a while. Learned a lot of valuable stuff on that side, and then the service side is actually really exciting. You work on so many different projects over the course of a day.
Yeah. That's
And
true.
meet a ton of different people, a ton of different challenges, and so it's really exciting. And I like that.
You like
the
that.
excitement of the startup world, where you really
Cool.
need to prove yourself. And I think it's valuable to have someone with a technical background doing the business development and sales. Because I think they've been the end user before, so they really know how to communicate with the geo team. So
Right. Let's rock it back. Let's rock it all the way back. Where were you born?
I was born in West Michigan.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Damn, at the Michigan Basin. Isn't that a wild one?
Yeah.
Thing
Yeah.
looks like a big bullseye on a map, man. crazy.
Been looking at that bullseye for a long time.
Oh man, some really old rocks too.
Yeah, for sure.
Very old rocks. So you're right next to the big lake they call Gitchagumi.
A little south of Gitchagumi. I grew up on Lake Michigan.
Oh, okay. All right.
So.
That song always rings in my head.
Oh, yeah.
The crash of the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Yep.
Man.
Gordon Lightfoot just passed away.
The guy that sang that song and wrote that song?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Like a week ago.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. Rest in peace, brother. Rest in peace. Golly. I have not heard that. I didn't get that in my Google feed.
Oh man.
Which is surprising because I'm sure they know I listen to that song quite frequently.
Right? It was all over my feed, but I think they know I'm from Michigan. So
there you go.
I think he's Canadian, but he's our boy still.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, we'll claim that.
Right.
We'll claim that all day.
Yep.
Well, that's cool. So you grew up with brothers and sisters?
I have one younger brother.
Okay.
Yep.
And what'd your parents do for a living?
So my dad is in like automotive manufacturing.
Oh, like Ford and
Yeah. So he has a die cast machine shop.
Die cast machine shop.
Yep.
Right on.
And
okay.
then my mom was worked in the court system. It's like a
the
court administrator.
Oh, whoa. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Getting people to come to jury duty.
Yeah, I guess. Luckily I had very little contact with that industry, so I'm not real sure.
Did you realize they use this building because the government courthouse right in Wichita Falls getting like remodeled?
Oh yeah.
So they're actually using this. Did you notice all the extra traffic?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, man, these people are ready to go. They're all walking fast, to the doors. I'm like, they're ready to see some rocks.
Yeah.
And they're all lining up for jury duty. I'm like, oh man.
That's awesome.
Poor guys. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so not from how did you get into geology, man? Like you.
Oh man.
Yeah.
So I went to Michigan State.
Okay, Michigan State.
That was the only school I ever wanted to go to.
Really?
I went there for nuclear physics.
Whoa.
And they had the top ranked nuclear physics program in the country. And so I was all in. And 3 years into school, I was not really enjoying it. It just wasn't what I had hoped college at Michigan State was going to be. Physics was kind of interesting, but I wound up taking a geology course and just couldn't believe that it was a real thing you could do for a career.
Amazing?
And I was a park ranger my whole all throughout college during the summers.
Yeah.
And so it was like, man,
Ranger Bob.
I was Ranger Bob.
Golly.
And, so I went to the professor one day, a couple weeks into the Intro to Geology elective, and I said, can you actually get a job? Like, is this something people get paid to do?
Yeah.
And he said, absolutely. And so I switched my major to geology right then.
Wow.
And then finished out the school year that way. And then I guess it was my senior year, right around Christmas break, Thanksgiving break, sometime in there, a guy from a Michigan State alumni, they came in from Chevron.
Okay.
It was the first I had ever heard of anybody in the department working in oil and gas.
Wow.
And he was telling us all this really cool stuff that he was working on. And we had just hired a new geophysics professor, young guy. So I turned next to him. I was sitting in the talk, and I turned next to him and I said, are you going to have a grad student next year? And he said, I don't know, are you interested? And I said, yep. So I left that lecture, went downstairs, signed up for the GRE. This was on like a Thursday.
Yeah.
Came in, took the GRE on a Monday.
Damn, you got that quick into your GRE?
I was committed to it. I was like, I'm going to do this.
Wow. I had to
Took it on
wait all
Monday.
kinds of time and freaking finally got to take my GRE.
Turns out you're supposed to study for it.
Yeah, that's right.
Didn't know that was a thing. So,
hey, it didn't help me.
yeah.
I had fucking 2 books opened up. I'm taking practice tests. And then you get in that cubbyhole for 5 hours, and I was just losing my mind, asking me the same types of questions, just different ways.
Yep.
I was losing it. I
Yeah.
can't. I don't do well. I don't do well
this
there.
This was sort of early. I mean, this was probably 2006.
Okay.
So Google, Wikipedia, they weren't
Wasn't
quite as
re-
robust as they are
yeah.
today. So I think I found on a Yahoo message board, somebody had given some pointers on the GRE. So I read that a couple hours before the test, went in. I did decently well on it.
Nice.
So he said, yeah, you're qualified. I'll take
You're
you as a
good.
grad student. And so I committed to grad school right then, and they got some scholarships for it and stuff.
Nice.
So did geophysics,
Oh, cool.
like a near surface applied environmental geophysics.
Near surface applied environmental geophysics.
Yeah, some combination of that. Basically, it's a geology degree, but my focus was using geophysical methods to look at some deformed clay layers up in northern Michigan,
Huh.
and how that basically why they were deformed in the way that they were, and
How
implications
interesting.
for groundwater flow.
Ah, they were barriers in the groundwater system.
Yeah. Yep.
And how deep was that?
Maybe a maximum of 150 feet
Oh,
at a total
wow.
maximum. I mean, most of the layers were
Right there.
tens of feet below the surface.
Man, you ever get to drill it? Did you ever get to see like a core of it or like
Never
cuttings?
saw a core, but the cool thing about my field area, so it was there were these bluffs up in Ludington, Michigan. And so from the bluffs, it just looked like you were on the top of a dune. But when you went down to the beach layer, there were these huge vertical clay diapirs
No
that were
way.
deformed from the glacial overburden. And so,
Clay diapirs.
yeah, these huge 100-foot tall vertical
100
structures.
foot tall.
And so the sand had eroded, but the clay
the
stayed.
clay
So there were
stayed.
these huge like blades of clay coming
No
out.
way.
They're so cool.
Where the hell can I see these?
They're in Ludington, Michigan.
Can you run a field trip sometime? Like, do we have an APG event coming up there?
We should. I'm sure the
You should
Michigan
run-
Basin Geological Society goes out there.
Come
It's amazing.
on.
It's amazing.
I mean, the Michigan Basin, Illinois Basin. I mean, we have a reason for the APG to go out there,
Let's do it.
get that community together, right?
Mhm.
We can start recording some of their stories, right?
Yep.
Get some of those guys on it, and you could lead the field trip. I want to see these things.
They're really cool. And the best part was I spent the entire summer living on the beach, studying these things. It was
Nice.
great. Did a bunch of electrical resistivity, ground penetrating radar, just kind of mapping out the orientation of them,
Huh.
because you could see them in the cut surface of the bluff.
Yeah.
But how are they oriented inland?
Yeah.
And then what does that mean if you have a groundwater remediation or something like that? Where
Oh,
would you
wow.
need injection wells or something like that?
Damn. So these clays were vertical beds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were horizontal, but when you get the glacial overburden, they deform into these vertical diapirs.
So were they fractured by the ice?
No, it's a pressure thing, and so the
Oh,
pressure
it's literally like a salt diapier type idea.
exactly the same.
Oh.
That pressure just sort of turns that into a fluid essentially, and they just squish up, form a diapier, and
Wow. Man, I saw this
Frozen place.
video, box of sand, right?
Mhm.
Box of beach sand.
Mhm.
And they put underneath it these little blowers, just air
Mhm.
blowers. Have you seen the way sand reacts with a little bit of air coming through it?
is that what they call sand volcanoes?
Dude, it's literally like mud. It's like
Liquefaction, isn't it?
It's what they weren't using that term, but it's the same look, it's the same feel. Like the tennis
Mhm.
balls were sinking into it and popping back up. It looked like water.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable how sand with air
Mm-hmm.
can look just like muddy water. I was
Mhm.
blown away by that.
Have you ever looked into the New Madrid fault zone in
New Madrid.
I think they pronounce it Madrid.
Really? Where's that at?
Like southern Missouri.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of something else then.
So they had a huge earthquake there.
Southern
Say-
Missouri?
Yeah, I want to say 1800 sometime.
Oh, wow.
It formed Reelfoot Lake.
The earthquake did?
Mm-hmm. So my
Holy
family's from there, so they tell stories about how the Mississippi started flowing upriver during this earthquake. It's a massive earthquake, and
What the hell?
one of the geophysicists at Michigan State had done a lot of studying there, and but there's all kinds of stories about this phenomenon with the sand in the area basically swallowing things because it turns into like quicksand basically, so it would swallow structures and stuff that was at the
What
surface
the-
just
isn't
just
that
from the shaking of an
crazy?
earthquake. It's
And here we
so
are
cool.
just walking around, just hanging out, thinking
Just
it's not going to happen
just
to us.
oblivious,
It's like, hope it doesn't happen here.
right?
Golly.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool, man. So you went and got your master's. You did some
Yep.
really interesting geophysics. That's
Yep.
really cool. What was your first job at a college again?
So I worked for a little startup core analysis company. It was
That's
called
right.
Ingrain.
Ingrain. Yeah, they sold out to Weatherford.
Halliburton.
Halliburton.
Yep.
Halliburton.
So just kind of applied
Cool.
through a recruiter. So I mean, I'm in Michigan, so I have no real concept of the industry
Yeah.
in Houston. I just knew I probably need to be in Houston. I had some contacts that said just get down to Houston. It'll happen. Just get down here. So I found this company. It was incredible. It was a really cool technology.
Right on.
Gave me a ton of opportunity to.
Right
I mean, I
on.
never ran an electron microscope. So when we bought one, and they came upstairs and said, "Has anybody done this?" Obviously, you lie and say, "Yeah."
Yeah. Let's
So-
give me that thing.
Yeah, it was fun. You know, it was a lot of long hours, but it was really cool to develop such a cool new technology.
Yeah.
Did that for a while. Kind of got involved in the business development side as well there.
Okay.
So I learned from some seasoned BD sales folks, kind of how to develop these relationships and
Right
stuff,
on.
and just sort of went from there.
Right on. What was it that Ingrain was really figuring out with all that? It's EEM. EEM. No, it's SEM.
Yeah.
SEM.
Yeah.
What were they? Well, I mean, what was it? What was the client going after? What they wanted? What were you guys discovering with Ingrain right there?
So it was really like a digital characterization and then ultimately fluid flow modeling. So we were capturing the pore space, whether it would be with SEMs, with a 2D SEM, 3D focused ion beam SEM, imaging that, taking serial slices, stacking them all together, and then
Having like this
simulating
cube.
fluid flow. through
Yeah.
there.
Wow.
So you could do relative permeability tests, in a few hours rather than
running the
trying to physically force measure
gas
two fluids.
into it, and
And there's core CT scanning to characterize lithology changes that maybe you can't see with the human eye.
wow,
but
that's cool.
X-ray CT will pick it up.
Really, like it sees like elemental changes that you
Yep.
can't.
Density
That's
changes.
cool. Density changes.
Yep.
That's what it's really seeing is the density
Yeah.
changing.
Yep.
That's cool.
Density and some elemental changes as well. There's kind of two things that really affect that.
CT scanning.
So yeah.
I wonder why they don't CT scan in wireline. Like, why not put a CT scanner and just drag that thing up a hole?
I don't know.
Like
I
a
think it's
resistivity
probably
line.
the physics of the tool needs to have a.
Is it a big machine?
Oh yeah. I mean,
Oh.
it's
It's the
for
same.
humans.
It's the same. Oh, it's you guys are running a log through the same thing. That
Same thing. Just crank the power up because the patient's already dead. So we crank the power up.
hate
to
those things, man.
scan rocks. Yeah.
I don't care if
It's
you got earplugs, sunglasses, music playing. I hate sitting in those freaking things, man.
It's tight.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Poor core. No, I'm just kidding. Right on. Okay, so let's dive into RevoChem, man.
Yeah.
Let's dive into what exactly is it. Let's
Mhm.
just start there. General description of someone standing in an elevator with you.
Yeah.
You don't want to listen to music. You say, "I'm Bob." They're like, "What do you do? What's RevoChem?"
So we do geochemical fingerprint analysis.
Okay.
So what we're doing is, we've got some patented extraction technologies. So we can, when we extract oil from cuttings or core samples, we do a physical extraction, no solvents or anything.
Oh, wow.
So we preserve a much larger range of compounds. And then we have what's called a multidimensional gas chromatography, or GC by GC. And what that does is, whereas traditional gas chromatography separates on boiling point, and maybe you get 100 to 150 compound or peaks that you can kind of identify. We separate on a second attribute as well called aromaticity. So we're looking at the ring structure, folding, double bonds.
Wow.
And so we're able to take those, traditional 1D peaks and separate them into an additional order of magnitude. So we're looking at over 2,000 compounds.
Golly.
And so when when we extract the oil from those cuttings,
Yeah.
maybe every 10 feet from a vertical well, we've now fingerprinted every 10 feet. We found that unique fingerprint. And so then we can analyze the produced oil and tie that back quantitatively to which zone it's coming from in the reservoir.
How interesting.
And there's
is
a
that?
whole lot of other, just from the extraction process and the establishment of the baseline, we get information on oil saturation, what we
cool.
call a
Lot of-
reservoir quality index. So it's a matrix permeability, water
Wow. So
saturation.
some byproducts come out of that.
Yeah, it's I wouldn't want to just call it byproducts, because those guys worked hard on that, but it's basically just that process alone gives us a ton
opens
of
it up.
really fast, and it's it's an independent data set compared to like petrophysics or something. So it matches up really well, but it's not done physically using physics. It's done by measuring the fluids and the extraction of those fluids. And then from the, you start doing the production allocation. Now you know exactly where your oil is coming from. You can monitor that through time. And so you can do this time lapse monitoring and see kind of how the reservoir, how those contributions change with just maturity of the reservoir as different zones come into play. And
what does that look like over time? You guys have a case study of one that's kind of like this sand. It's all perfed.
Yep.
But this sand came out with these types of, I'm guessing it's aromatics and alkanes that you guys are really differentiating.
It's everything from, C 12, 13, 14, all the way up, typically into the mid 20s.
Okay.
Typically what we're looking at. But I mean, there's thousands of compounds, and
kind of that center peak of the Dimetrodon fan that hydrocarbon, thing makes.
And we're not just looking at the biomarkers themselves. What we're looking at is really the ratio between them. So it's the same compounds are in, most all these oils, but it's subtle changes in the ratio between those peaks. So that's how we're able to differentiate every 10 feet vertically.
Man. And so aromatics and alkanes, there's 2,000 different combinations of how they hook together. And wow, that's like the pentanes and hexanes. And is that all that stuff? Or no, what am
Remember, you're talking to a geologist and geophysicist here, not a geochemist. So.
I'm trying to remember these wild names of these polyaromatic hydrocarbons, like the stuff that really makes the oil, the foundation of solid state hydrocarbons and the relationship to the liquid state to gas, right? Liquid and gas. It's all part of that. And it comes from the kerogen, makes the oil, makes the gas. So you guys are getting the rock, which has the kerogen in it. And then you're extracting a fluid from that or a gas, and and then breaking out that real specifically in these dimensions.
Yeah.
Instead of just
we're really extracting the mobile oil.
Okay.
That's truly what it is. So no, we're not mobilizing anything that shouldn't be mobilized because we're not using any solvents. And we're looking at the oil fraction. So that's why we're able to get an oil saturation. We're able to get this permeability index because we're really looking at what is the mobile hydrocarbon that we're able to extract.
Right. Well, yeah, I guess depending on if it's a CO2 flooded area or if it's gas drive or water drive, I mean, some of that stuff, the way you extract it might be actually still moving, but I like the idea. I like the idea that you extract
we
without solvents.
We're by not using solvents, we're not over extracting.
Right, introducing something that's completely foreign and maybe messing something up in the analytics.
Exactly.
Right on. Okay, and so let's go to an actual like kind of real life example of what this looks like. The bottom sand is one set of very distinct hydrocarbon markers, and the top one is another. And then you have the production, which the well's just perfed in all of it, commingling. They're just making 100 barrels a day, 2,000 barrels of brine. You take a sample of the composite oil that's coming from both, and you sit there and you go, all right, here's 3 months, and then here's 6 months, and then 12 months, and you go over time. You know the two distinct ones. Now you have a commingled fluid, and then that commingled fluid starts changing more into what one or the other over time.
So even more higher resolution than that. So not just an upper sand and a lower sand, but every 10 foot, what are slight variations in those benches within those upper zones and lower zones. So it's not just, is this an upper or lower Eagleford, for example, but literally every 10 feet, we've even done tests where it's finer resolution than that. And not just talking every, month 1, month 3, but we've seen up to, 80, 85, 90% change in drainage pattern in the first 2 weeks.
Wow.
So we'll take, we've done first flow back and then 8 hours later, and then the next day, and then 3 days after that, and another 3 days after, and you see wild fluctuations.
Really, that flush,
that initial production. It's a great representation of your overall drainage frac height.
Right.
But then you start to see, maybe after a few days, the ends of those fracs, they start to close up a little bit, or you get an initial production from a certain zone, and then you start to see that decrease, but a lower zone starts to kind of come in.
Isn't that interesting?
It's so we actually we published a paper at ERTEC this summer, and it's a statistical look at all the, we've got 1,000 wells or something like that in our database, and so our team looked at that just kind of statistically. What are we seeing across, multiple different basins here: Permian, Mid-Con,
type 2, type 1,
everything,
all the different
the
stuff.
whole range of it.
Yeah.
Really looking at, and separating that production into multiple phases, and so it's that early phase, those first couple of weeks, wild changes for even maybe up to the first couple of months, and then you've got that sort of where it's starting to stabilize that month 6 to a year or so, and then after that, a year to 2 or 3, and then you've got that very long term. What's it look like in 4, 5, 6 years from now?
Jeez.
And they're all very distinct patterns.
Isn't that wild?
And then throw in something like a CO2 flood or
Right.
a refrac or
some different technology that's doing different chemical breakdowns.
Just infill drilling or activity on the next door pad can immediately start changing that stuff, even though it's been a legacy producing for years.
So in a perfect world, in a perfect project
Mm-hmm.
for RevoChem, if you guys were to just stand on the platform talking to every operator, big and small,
Mm-hmm.
and said, we want to create the perfect program
Mm-hmm.
to figure out your asset and how you can optimize where all your pay is actually coming from.
Mm-hmm.
What would that look like? You need to start with coring the well. You need a core.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Coring's great. Cuttings are every bit as good. The nice thing about cuttings is you're not using 1 inch, a rotary or something, right? Like you're not just trying to characterize 10 feet by 1 inch. You get
Right.
some samples over that whole 10-foot interval. So what you really want to do, a perfect project, you collect cuttings, let's say every 10, 15 feet.
Yep.
And you start collecting, 100 feet or more above your shallowest producing zone.
Okay.
And you collect through your entire zone and then 100 feet or so below.
Okay.
So you make sure you covered all of your production and then any potential out of zone contribution that may or may not be there. So you do that. We run we extract it. We run our analysis. We establish that baseline. We give you those reservoir characterization indices. So you've got your oil in place index. You've got the reservoir quality, matrix perm index. You've got your water saturation.
Right on.
That can help with targeting.
Sure.
So,
where
stuff
you
like
want to
that.
perf.
Exactly.
Kind of ideas.
So we establish that. Then the operator makes their decision where they're going to land. And then we start collecting samples from that initial flow back. Maybe you get a sample day 1, 3, 5,
Right.
10. We kind of have a recommended sampling program, but essentially it's more samples in the first week or two, and then you start going weekly,
Space it out.
every other week, monthly, whatever.
Wow. For what?
And,
Maybe 12 months? You need a year? You want
As long as you want. So
Well,
we typically see those changes start to stabilize after maybe 6 or 8 months. But we have, we're publishing, I think it's like our 3rd case study with Diamondback.
Nice.
And they've got some wells that have been monitoring for years.
Wow.
And
how fast does all the cuttings information come back? If you're drilling that well, you TD'd, you send all your cuttings off. How long does it take to get all that information back before you're casing and perforating?
Yeah. So it takes us about 2 to 3 weeks to turn this around.
Okay. And
So
that's hundreds of feet of cuttings?
Yep.
Right
Yep.
on. That's
Yeah.
not bad.
Yeah. And then same thing when you send us the oils. So most folks, they'll collect those first couple weeks and they'll send us, I don't know, a couple dozen samples at a time, maybe.
Yeah.
And again, it's only 2-3 weeks, and then we get together and okay, here's how it's allocated back. Here's how
Wow.
your production started off.
What the
Here's
hell?
sort of how it's settled in over the course of the first whatever.
What the heck?
A couple months later, we'll get another batch of samples, and here's what it looks like from month 3 to 6 or
on.
whatever.
Very cool, man.
Yeah.
Very cool.
It's really, and then we can start looking at the analysis is sensitive enough to look at 2 laterals landed in the same zone.
Okay.
And we can see how much overlap their drainage volumes have. So even though they're landing in the same Wolf Camp A,
Right.
the same bench of the Wolf Camp A,
Yeah.
there are subtle differences in this oil versus this one that's
No
300 feet
kidding.
away.
No
And so we can
kidding.
tell you to what degree are these wells communicating.
Right on.
So we could monitor
Man,
that
I
through
would love to
time.
talk more about those subtle differences in those
Yeah.
things between just the same reservoir, 300 feet spacing.
Mm-hmm.
Hydrocarbons are different.
Yep.
There's subtle differences in the hydrocarbons.
Yep.
Man, that's really cool.
Those molecules have taken different pathways. They've had slight differences in mineralogy that they've encountered.
Right.
Slightly
That's
different thermal
right.
histories, and it changes those ratios just enough, and we're able
You
to
can
measure
see that. Wow.
Yeah.
Talking about the completion part of this show, man. Like, where do you see RevoChem going? How do you, as business development manager,
Mm-hmm.
right? What are you hearing? What kind of changes are you guys making as a company
Mm-hmm.
to adjust to client feedback?
Yeah.
How do you see the next 3 to 5 years really going?
So, obviously that we're improving the data analytics part of it. So, we're looking at monitoring not just the vertical changes, but 3-dimensionally. So we've got, we can measure changes laterally, vertically, through time. So looking at these 3-dimensional changes, we have a database. So just continuing to grow that database. And so maybe folks don't have a pilot well, or they're looking to make an acquisition, so they don't have any wells in an area. What can they get from us that can give them some regional trends to help make
Really?
these acquisition decisions?
You got like type logs running around the basin almost.
Yeah, basically production
Wow.
allocation type logs. Yeah. So we've got
Wow.
about 1,000 wells in that so far.
Wow. Across the country?
Yeah. So we've got that in the Permian, Eagle Ford, Anadarko, and Uinta.
Wow. Is RevoChem just U.S. right now, or do you have data? Do you have operations going on outside the U.S.?
So our lab, we're all in Houston,
Okay.
but we're working with companies. A lot of work in Argentina, North Sea, Middle East, all over the place.
Really?
Canada.
Really?
That's another big area of growth for us, is obviously internationally. But we're starting to get a lot of interest from companies working in condensate reservoirs. And so between our extraction method and the GC by GC, we're able to get quantitative information from condensate, which is much more limited in the compounds available, a lot lighter end, a lot of it's been volatilized. So that's a big area of growth for us too, is condensate reservoirs.
Right on.
Mhm.
Right on. Well, I'm
And
excited, man.
we've got water analysis that we're developing. A lot of people ask, where's the water coming from?
That's
so we
right.
have
What's
ways
in
to
the water?
all that good stuff. Yeah. So I think in the next 6 months, you'll probably see a lot more of those types of products. rolling out.
Man. Now, in the water today, are you guys extracting the kerogens that's in the water? Have you done any work on the solid state stuff floating around in the water?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about
That'd
that.
be cool to
Yeah, that
take a
would be
look
cool.
at. See what's going on there.
Mhm.
What kind of polyaromatics are in there
Mhm.
that potentially are contributing to the aromatics and alkanes of actual H2Cs that are forming.
There's a lot of challenges with water, and I won't even pretend to be familiar with it, but there's lots of challenges with sample collection and preservation.
Oh wow.
You got
Yeah.
obviously, like, you start changing the temperature and pressure of these formation fluids, particularly with water, there can be a lot of challenges. So
Do you ever run into any issues? Last question, and we can get going on the Stay Positive book and call it a show.
Okay.
Do you ever get a lot of interference with chemical programs in these things? Right, they're introducing something that they don't even know. The operator will buy it, and the chemical company's like, it's mostly HCl, but we do have a proprietary mix of different things. We're not going to tell you. It's our thing.
we have not. The only challenge that we have really run into is with oil-based muds, because you've got them mixing with
right.
the formation oils. So
Right.
you've got an oil-based mud, formation oils. Now they're commingling,
Right.
combined with the analyzing cuttings. You've got that huge surface area to volume ratio, and so they wind up basically imbibing into the cuttings, and it masks
That's
the
tough.
native
That's
oil
tough,
signature. But it's fine with core and rotaries or whole core chunks.
You can get.
But as
past
far
that.
as tracers, none of that affects our
on.
analysis. Any other chemical, we've not seen any other negative impacts from other
Right on.
chemical
Okay.
processes.
Well, man, I'm excited. Let's go with the Stay Positive book. We'll end this thing.
All
I
right.
like your perspective. I like your attitude. You're excited to be at RevoChem. So
Absolutely.
If you need it, we're going to go for it. Encouraging quotes and messages to fuel your life with positive energy.
All right.
PBE Podcast 2023, Southwest Section APG. Just tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Got it. Ooh, I like it. It's a short one, too. Start with the left side. There's nothing more powerful than a humble person with a warrior spirit who is driven by a bigger purpose.
Okay.
You like did that roll? Did
I like
that hit
one.
you?
That one got me. Yeah.
You kind of have that Viking look to you. So, I mean, that warrior is coming out. There's nothing more powerful than a humble person with a warrior spirit who is driven by a bigger purpose.
I like that one.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Next one. The more you count your blessings, the less you'll be stressing.
It's a good outlook.
Right?
Yeah.
The more you count your blessings, you're just like, you know what? Woke up today.
Yep.
You know, I'm ready to go. I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
And you fill that space
Mm-hmm.
that might be wanting to get filled with the, you know, you're not going to do anything today. You're going to waste your day today. You're procrastinating. You know, the negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the one previous podcast said it. He said, you know, the way you get fear out of your brain is to fill it with knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever you're scared of, go read about it. Go learn more about it. Go talk to somebody about it, and you'll remove that fear and replace it with knowledge. And I think that's
a good one. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's kind of
and quantifying those, counting you're quantifying your blessings. Little things like you might hate your commute. There's nothing like being laid off to wish you had a commute.
Jeez. Yeah.
Yep.
Perspective, right?
Perspective. Yeah.
Like, you know what? Am I really upset about this? Change my perspective? No. What if I didn't have a job to commute to?
Mm-hmm.
That would not be cool.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of like this song all of a sudden.
Right.
Like, I'm dealing with this.
Opportunity to listen to some books on tape. Or
Yeah.
podcast,
Maybe a
whatever.
podcast.
That's Get
Nice.
yourself a nice.
Now,
Nice
you
energy
play the
podcast.
guitar. You play the guitar. Where does all this musical affinity come from?
My parents at a young age, elementary school, try orchestra, try band. So I played trombone in band for, gosh, I don't know. It's a young elementary school all through high school. And
Right
then,
on. Which one's the trombone?
Which one's the trombone?
Yeah.
The one with the slide.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So
you
did
kind of
that.
have to have that, like,
You do?
right? That's the
Yep.
noise you got to make with that one?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Oh, man. That. And then what's the other one you had?
So, then I had some friends that were good drummers and good guitar players, and
Nice. They're like, hey, drop the
I wanted to
trombone,
hang
man.
out with them.
Yeah.
You can't show up to a
You're
rock
like,
concert
yeah.
with a trombone. Although ska was big, so I was like, let's make a ska band. So I
That
just
would've worked.
decided to learn the bass guitar.
Okay. Bass
Seemed
guitar.
like the
Bum, bum,
easiest way to
bum,
get
bum.
in, to
Slap
hang out
the
with my
bass.
buddies.
Slapping bass.
That's right. So did that for a while, and then that's not the most exciting thing to jam on with your friends. And so, my 3-year-old one day, she came home from school and, Daddy, can you learn how to play the guitar?
Is that
And
right?
so that's a perfect excuse for me to go buy guitars
That's
and amps and
freaking
pedals. And
awesome. So you went
just
all in.
Go all in and get obsessive about it. So
That's
now we're
great,
there with a
man.
whole collection of guitars and amps. And
Right
stuff
on.
like that.
Right on. You still like playing a little ska on the guitar?
I wish.
No?
I wish.
Is it-
Dude, I'm still trying to learn basic chords and
Oh, man.
chord progressions and
Man,
stuff
I
like
hear you,
that.
dude.
But
I
it's
hear
fun.
you. Yeah, heck yeah, it's
fun.
fun, man. It's rewarding, too,
Yep.
when you actually get it going. And for the rest of your life, you go to somewhere and there's a guitar sitting there, you can pick it up and
Mhm.
start making noises, and people are like, oh, that's nice.
and it's a cool creative outlet. I mean, I meet
Yeah.
so many people that, whether it's music or painting or whatever, it's a little. I might not be good at it, but it's fun to just tinker around. And,
Right? It's a creative outlet.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. And sound is amazing, man. Sound is such a powerful and underestimated, not well understood,
Mm-hmm.
the phenomenons of science and
Mhm.
particle physics and all that stuff. When you really get into my voice projecting through the air into your ears and how you hear it and
Oh yeah.
how you feel all that stuff. And then you do a guitar and they talk about the different frequencies the guitar can
Mhm.
be pitched into and the different tones. Like, man,
It's a rabbit hole,
dude.
and it's so fun to go down it.
Right? It
Mhm.
is really, really cool, man. And you get to make those noises. You're a creator,
Yep.
right? You're a creator on that guitar. That's really, man,
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed it, Bob. Thank
Me
you for
too.
sharing your time with us today.
Absolutely.
Wish you the best with RevoChem and being the business development manager, man. That's cool. I
Yeah,
look
thank you.
forward to staying in touch.
It's been a lot of fun and looking forward to the future.
Right on.
Thanks.
Thank you, man.